Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Hey, it's been about a month, but we finally have an update to the Trade Tuesday series. Once again, we sold some stuff. I'm sorry, but we do have something new to unbox. But let's do a quick recap here. So we started with the toy guitar, got $100 out of that. And that kind of split off into 4 different things, and we just kind of went woo! Down here with the Hondo Death Dagger, we got that pedal, the Electra Omega, and then those things sold, and then last time we left off with that Gem Junior with a case, $43, and that Effector Explorer, which was a pretty cool little thing. And I am beyond pleased to say that we finally got rid of that 60s, 70s manual and the 70s pickup card. Those are kind of items, if you're patient, you can actually get a lot more than I got out of them. I got $42 on that manual and $23.50 on that pickup card. And the Gem Junior netted us $344, and the Effector Explorer netted $235. So altogether, we had $687.50. And this is quite a significant amount, because remember, the goal this time is not necessarily a custom shop guitar. The goal for Season 3 is a Les Paul Studio, because that's what I was supposed to get before I was scammed with the toy guitar. $687.50 will get you a Les Paul Studio. But I actually have a very particular Les Paul Studio that I would like to end Season 3 with. It's a really rare one, it's got a cool finish, and there just happens to be one on Reverb right now. So hopefully we can wrap this up and triple our money very soon so we can grab it. But for today's unboxing, I spent $637, so that means we've got $50.50 in the bank. Let's go ahead and see what's in this box. Oh, how the tables have turned. With Trade Tuesday, I like to do kind of interesting guitars that I don't normally feature. And this is actually a Gibson model that I've kind of condemned, to some people's dismay. I've never been a huge fan of this model, but this one just happened to tick all the boxes that made it interesting. There's enough to talk about on this one. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what this model is. It's a Gibson Sonex. And if you don't know about these things, they were kind of an 80s model, you know, early 80s. And it's kind of like one of those models that was a studio before a studio. So in a roundabout way, we could say I've completed Trade Tuesday Season 3 with this thing, but it's not technically a studio. These things replaced the Gibson Marauder and S1, so it's the bolt-on neck series. Then eventually these guys made way to the extended range series, the XR1, 2, and 3, and then you got the custom shop edition Silver Streak, and then finally in 1983, you get the Les Paul Studio, and those things are still in production yet today. So I've been on the record multiple times saying I'm not a huge fan of these guitars, and if you pay more than like $350 to $450, you've paid too much. So why did I end up paying, what was it again here? $637? Gosh, that's like top dollar. It's because this one checked all the right boxes. It's got a special finish, it has the original wooden hardshell case that's pretty nice, and there was something very special that I'd never seen on one of these before. So if that doesn't hype you guys up enough, let's go ahead and open this thing. Sunburst. Okay, this is not my favorite finish on the Sonex, but at least it's not black, right? Black is like just that standard color that they all have. So I was led to believe that this thing was like in very clean condition. You know, at first glances here, I think I've been slightly lied to. I'm not sure if this happened in shipping, but there's a lot of finish checking here. I mean, there's a lot of finish checking on the neck in itself. There's like some scuffs here. The only thing I don't really like is they've got whatever this is going on here. But that's likely just a line where the fretboard meets the neck. But look at that headstock! Has anybody else ever seen this? Sonex by Gibson. That's not what you normally find up there. Usually you find this. The Gibson Guitar Company. So when I saw that, I flipped out. Because in all of my years of looking at these guitars, I had never found a Sonex that had an alternate branding. This is technically not a Gibson guitar. It's kind of like one of those Epiphone by Gibsons. And notice that they use the special Gibson font like you find on the pre-war banjo things, as well as the Les Paul Artisan. So is this technically a Gibson? I mean, it's built to the same specs as the other ones. And it was made in the Nashville plant in 1982. So that's the reason why I decided to pick this one up, because it got my collector senses tingling. I was able to do a Google search and I found a few other ones of these. I mean, it doesn't seem to be heavily prevalent, but maybe at one point in time, Gibson was going to stop making these under the 100% Gibson brand name and actually downgrade them even further. So just kind of interesting history with this one, because up until today, I don't think anybody's really ever talked about it. So special finish, special headstock, original case. You also have case candy here. These aren't particularly expensive to buy aftermarket either, but it's just nice. Apparently this actually came to that shop from the original owner, so it's just kind of cool to have all this stuff. But something a little bit special about this particular case, 576. Huh. Unfortunately, our serial numbers do not match. Somebody might be playing games here. I mean, it's possible they just messed up because they got the 816 right, but 9 instead of 0, 2, 5, then 7, 6. They could have been dyslexic and confused that 0 for a 6, so I don't know if that's necessarily the original one, but it's in here. But something else special about this case is this is actually an upgraded case. Normally, you can find these, they're big, clunky wooden cases. This one doesn't feel like it's made of that solid wood like that last one I had. And it's deluxe in the fact that it actually has a double neck rest. The version of these that has a single neck rest, they are garbage cases. They are so heavy and they offer no protection. But this one, you've got the double neck rest, ample room for stuff to be put in here, and you get this. A little buttoned-in pouch to put other stuff in. Well, that's not looking promising. So, despite some of these condition issues, it's not in too bad of shape. Maybe a little bit more worn than I was expecting, but I think we'll still do okay. So let's go ahead and throw the Sonex 180 Deluxe on the workbench and take an up-close look at its parts and specs. Inside our Sonex by Gibson, I did a little bit of a polish job on this guy. I mean, it wasn't too bad when it showed up, but there was like some sort of haze that thankfully that polish was able to get out, so it does look pretty clean, but it does have all that finish checking, and there were a few nicks and dings I found. So honestly, buying this from a dealer, I'm a little bit disappointed with their description of it. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the inside of these parts. When I first tore apart a Sonex, I think that's where my disdain for this model came from, because normally with Gibson stuff, you'll find quality CTS pots in here. It'll either all be American or German made, but these guys actually use overseas style pots. So yes, this is 100% factory stock. I don't actually see any markings on them. I think sometimes you can find Korea or made in Japan, depending on the year and what they were using. I mean, look at the three-way toggle switch. It's got this extra housing on the sides. That's not what Gibson normally uses for these guys. This is the Sonex Deluxe. It's the lowest end version, and it gets what they call the Velvet Brick pickups. So don't confuse these with the Velvet Hammer pickups. That's a completely different company. This is the Velvet Brick. But they just read Sonex 180 Deluxe on the back. They kind of have the Tim Shaw-like date stamps. But believe me, these are not Tim Shaw's. But what is kind of interesting about them is they actually have 3 adjustment locations. So you've got 3 springs on these guys. And you'll see those screws poking through. What they do for this, despite having a giant pick guard over top of the entire guitar pretty much, they also use the mounting rings right here. They could have just mounted it to the pick guard like they did so many other things, but this is actually a slightly premium feature that I don't think I've ever given the Sonex credit for, because you're less prone to cracking the pick guard and having additional issues if you use these rings. So that tells you about Gibson's confidence of how strong this pickguard would be. Maybe it just comes down to the whole 3-leg adjustments. But these are hot ceramic pickups. Let's go ahead and grab our readings real quick. Our bridge pickup is 7.74 and the neck position 7.76. That's kind of interesting. I've always read that these were ceramic humbuckers, but usually ceramics are twice that much. Generally, the people that say that they like the Sonex, they're like in rock or kind of grungy bands. So there's definitely a place for these guys. They're just, not my favorite guitars. Continuing on here, here's what the body itself looks like. Very, very crude, to say the least. But you gotta remember, these Sonex are not actually real wood guitars. They are, but they're not. So they've got a real wood core right here, and then on top of that they have what they're calling resin wood. Essentially it's like a pancake body, so they've got regular wood, and then they put a mold on top of that, and then had the resin kind of fill in the rest, and it's supposed to be able to survive extreme temperatures of extra cold and super hot to avoid warping and things like that. And they said that they sculpted the tone to make this thing sustain forever, and yeah, I think a lot of that was just marketing. It was just to make a cheap guitar. So as you can see, it is a bolt-on neck here. It doesn't even have like a separate neck pocket. It just fits into the body right there. But with a giant swimming pool route like that, you can modify these with whatever you want, including triple humbuckers. Though you might have to do some slight additional routing here for some legs, depending on what you're trying to put in there. But we'll just take a quick look under the pickguard. You can see the finish is checked pretty much all over this. And a lot of that stems from the screw holes, but overall, a pretty nice example of a very mid-grade level guitar. I did find somebody wrote S on that with a pen. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it was an accident and it wasn't supposed to be an S, but it is there if you're looking for it. And I was looking at this bridge on this thing. It's like, oh, ABR1, that's kind of cool. That's worth quite a bit of money just on its own. Then you flip it over. Yeah, here's your Japan part on this. This is stock. They just use kind of the cheaper stuff. Nothing against Japan. Japan actually makes some fantastic guitars today. But you would normally find Germany parts on these guys. Now, what kind of stinks about this particular example is that the bridge is pretty much all the way down as far as it can go. Now, our action is good, thankfully. If it wasn't, then we'd be having some issues. But I think I actually need to raise this just a hair, because I'm noticing on the 11th and 12th fret, those notes just completely buzz out. They don't really ring. But take a look at that angle. It's a little bit more extreme than normal. It's either that or I'm not used to seeing the straight edge in front of it, so it's kind of throwing me for a loop. But the tailpiece, I mean, it appears to have very similar tooling marks as the regular one, so it could be Schaller made, I'm not sure. But it seems like pretty much everything on here was Japanese made. So moving on from the polyphonic body, and it appears to be a rosewood fretboard to me. I polished these frets up, conditioned that, so this is at least looking pretty good. It looks like it's rocking the standard 12-inch Gibson radius with the 24 3/4-inch scale, 22 frets, and they're a pretty standard height for the era. But take a look at that nut width, 1.73. That's really, really large. A little bit larger than normal, but up here it's about average, so 2.03. The first fret neck depth, 0.83, so that's pretty good there. And at the 12th fret, 0.97, so kind of a slightly chunky C-shaped neck. And here's what that looks like at the first fret and then the 12th fret. Now that we got it all strung up, good news, I was actually able to get rid of those dead frets. This just needed to be raised just a hair. So everything's good with playability now, and you might be wondering, hey, why is the ABR1 bridge backwards? It just is. That's how it was from the factory. But to continue on here, we've got some good news. I was able to polish this back up. It's now nice and reflective, maybe a little bit too reflective for video purposes. But the back is clean from any routs. Like, if it wasn't for the bolt-on neck and you take a picture like this, it almost reminds me of like a late 50s Gibson Melody Maker that was still the single cut shape. But the back is kind of like a deep maroon color. That's kind of cool. I always thought the backs of these guys were just black and they had the sunburst on top. But you can see there's finish checking along the back as well, pretty much all over. There's a pretty nasty scratch right there that dug into the finish. And it's got some wear and tear, so please don't think this one's mint condition. But it's pretty respectable for a model that usually gets trashed. But bolt-on neck, if you get it in the light just right, you can actually see it is 3 pieces, so it might be a 3-piece maple neck. There's some sort of an impression right here. Thankfully, polishing that up kind of took away the visual eyesore for the most part, but you can still see that. And you've got some light nicks and dings along the neck here, especially up here. Now that's not like a break, crack, or repair. That looks like the impression of like a capo or something to me that was moving up and down. And you can't see right here where that fretboard has that line where it joins the neck. There is a very small area of separation right there. That's nothing that's ever going to cause you any issues. But the one thing that almost stopped me from buying this guitar is the serial number. There used to be like this really yellow stain over top of this. I thought it was like a ding that was scratching out the serial number. Don't ever buy a guitar that has a serial number modified there. Impossible to sell, because that means it was previously stolen. Now this one, it's got some impressions right there, but you're going to notice that looks very similar to what's on the neck. So somebody probably just put the capo on top of here when they weren't using it or something like that. So that's probably how that was caused. So nothing malicious there. But these appear to be Goto style tuners, and if you know anything about those, they're made in Japan.
The only other thing to look out for on these Sonex guitars are neck pocket cracks. This one looks pretty good right here, but you can see like a very small stress line right here. It's not like a full-on crack, but if you get it in the light just right, you can see there is a little bit of a stress right there. And the weight of these guys are usually pretty chunky, 9 pounds, 3.7 ounces. But considering everything, that was actually pretty light for the era. Let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. Now that we know everything about the Gibson Sonex, what are my final thoughts on this particular example? It did not change my mind. I'm still not a fan of this model. I'm sorry. There's some people that like them, but you know, if you can pick one up cheap enough, like $450 or under, it's definitely worth it because, you know, you get a quirky 80s Gibson. It's got a certain vintage vibe to it, but it's definitely not going to be the best guitar that you can get at that price range. So in fact, please do not trade me anything for this guitar if you're still at that phase where you're just looking for your next great playing instrument. This is kind of like a collector's piece only because it has a very rare iteration of the Sonex logo on the headstock. That's pretty much the only thing this thing's got going for it. I mean, the action isn't awful, but it's a little bit higher than I would want, and you really don't have any room for lower adjustments, so you're just kind of stuck with what it is. You technically shim the neck a little bit to make that better as well. So you got options because it's a bolt-on, but it's just kind of a pretty collector's piece for the most part, so I think we'll just leave it at that. One of these days I need to try one of the versions that gets the Dirty Fingers pickups because I think I would personally like that one better. So if you're interested in trading me something for this guitar or purchasing it, you can check it out on Reverb or email me at tradetrogly@gmail.com if you have a trade offer. I think this one's unique enough. It's got the case, it's got some case candy, the nice logo. I'll throw a Hail Mary on this one and see what we can get, because I'd hate for that studio to sell that I do want, but let's see what we can get. So thank you Troglodytes for tuning in today, and let's end out with a blacklight test. This one actually looks pretty cool under blacklight. It seems we've got some light sweat absorption in this area, but everything else is kind of this ghastly green color. Looking on the back, everything's looking pretty good here. We'll take a look around the neck pocket here. That's always a good area. Yeah, that kind of helps you see that line I was talking about. It's not like a huge crack, like sometimes you can literally feel it. This one, you can just barely feel it with your nail. The finish hasn't even been worn off the neck that much. It's just those capo marks to really know about this one. So everything's looking pretty good on this one. So thank you Troglodytes for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.